Good evening and welcome into the Pacers Podcast Show. I'm Kyle Newman, your host.
And I'm Rhett Hensley, your co-host.
We have a great lineup for the next 45 minutes. We will discuss the Pacers' last 5 games, take a look at the current Eastern Conference standings, talk about the best offseason options for Indiana, preview the Pacers' next 2 games, and talk about Paul George's play or not play situation. Rhett, it's great to be back with you. We apologize, everybody, for some technical difficulties that we had today, but we are back, and we are happy to be back. Rhett, it's great to be back with you.
I'm looking forward to the show, ready to talk some basketball.
Absolutely. Pacers basketball, that's what we do. All right, so let's get right into this first segment then. March 25th at Washington. Indiana finally ended their 6-game losing streak, winning a thrilling one, 103-101. Indiana is now 1-2 against the Wizards this season. George Hill led the way for the Pacers with 29, including the game-winning layup with 2 seconds left. Hill has averaged 22 points over the last 7 games. C.J. Miles added 16 for Indiana. John Wall led the way for the Wizards with a season-high 34 points. Marcin Gortat added 16 for Washington. Rhett, this was a game of runs and fight. The Pacers did a good job coming back. What did you see in this game?
Well, George Hill with an outstanding game, and what a game winner did he have. A nice little layup going past the Wizards defense with the David West screen at the top. But, C.J. Miles, 16 points. Solomon Hill, 13. It's nice to see Solomon Hill score. But one thing that I would like to have saw would have been more free throws made. Shot 68% from the line. But, hey, they got the Pacers win.
Yes, they did. And they took care of the ball as well. And you look at the fundamental categories, that's good as well. 10 turnovers. And so did the Wizards take care of the ball themselves.
It was a really evenly matched game if you go statistic-wise. So it was a good one.
Yes, it was. Close win for the Pacers. Much needed as they were on a serious drought as far as wins go. These two teams will meet one final time in the regular season a couple weeks from now, April 14th. At Bankers Life. All right, so the next night at Milwaukee in the final regular season matchup against the Bucks, the Pacers dropped a close one, 111-107. Indiana is now 2-2 against Milwaukee this year. Ersan Ilyasova had the game of his life. It led all scorers with a career-high 34 points. The man could not miss. Chris Middleton added 17 for the Bucks. For the Pacers, C.J. Miles led the way with 26, followed by George Hill with 24 and C.J. Watson with 23. Now, David West was out due to an illness. Rhett, what did you see in this game?
Well, they shot 47% from three-point range. That was pretty good. If we are looking back, they were regularly shooting in around the 30s for a while, so that improved. They out-rebounded the Bucks by 11 rebounds. That's good. And, the thing that really just killed the Indiana Pacers was turnovers. 19 turnovers, and, the Bucks are one of the number one teams in creating turnovers. I mean, they have Jason Kidd on. They have the Jason Kidd as their coach. What a player was he. So,
absolutely. I agree with that. When you make 14 three-pointers, as the Pacers did, you really give yourself a chance. And surprising that they could not pull out the win with that many three-pointers, 14-9 that the Bucks made. And you look at that turnover battle you were talking about, big difference there. The Pacers turned it over 19 times, way too many turnovers. You'll never win a game when you turn the ball over that many times. But out-rebounding the Bucks by 11. So you'd look at the statistics and think the Pacers should have won this game, but they didn't. It was another close loss. The Pacers have had too many of them, but really it was Ilyasova who had the game of his life. Every time the Pacers would make a run, he would answer with some three or shot in the layup. Or
shot in the layup.
Shot in the layup.
There we go. Shot in the layup.
Or shot in the paint. Regardless, I like that Red is making jokes. Yes, I had a little tongue twister there, but yes, he had an incredible game and really was the answer for the Bucks. So the next game against Dallas on
Flojos,
a Flojo night at Bankers Life on March 29th. In the last matchup of the regular season against the Mavericks, the Pacers took care of business on the road, grinding out a nice W. I'm sorry, at home, grounded out a nice W, 104-99. Indiana is now 2-0 against the Mavs this season. C.J. Miles led all scorers with 28. George Hill and Roy Hibbert each added 14 for the Pacers. For the Mavericks, Chandler Parsons led the way with 27, followed by Dirk with 19 and Rondo with 17. Dallas was without leading scorer Monte Ellis. This was an interesting game. As we mentioned, Indiana is now a perfect 5-0 with the Flojos this season. I think they should be wearing them every game, if you ask me. But this was one of those games where the Pacers were really on their game. They came to play in a tough environment on the road. Dallas, a strong, solid team in the Western Conference, and really, I thought that it was a great game all around by the Pacers players. They got back to their defensive identity a little bit in this one. What did you see, Rhett?
Well, they did get back in their defensive identity, but they shot pretty decent, 44%. But back to the free throw thing. Looks like they need to be doing a little bit more work on that. They shot 68% from the line. But, at the end of the day, they went in, got the job done, and brought home the win. So, really it was just a good game all around. C.J. Miles, 28 points, scored the last 5 points for the Indiana Pacers to bring home the W.
Good stat.
They snapped a 4-game home losing streak, and at that point they were 2-9 in the last few games. So,
it was a home win that they needed, and they got it, and that was good. Another concern, though, for them, probably what kept this game so close, is they turned the ball over 15 times. They're not doing a good job of taking care of the ball in recent games, an issue that, well, as we will see here, has led to some losing ways. In fact, the Pacers have lost 9 out of the last 11 games now. Not necessarily the recipe that you want looking to go into the playoffs.
One thing I would like to see is, Rodney Stuckey has not been playing. He's not as consistent as he should be. He scored 10 points, but he was 4 of 14 in shooting. That shows some inconsistency right there. He was killing it for the Indiana Pacers
earlier in their run. Yes, it was their 6-game winning streak, and now it's kind of reversed, and he's kind of all over the place now.
Really, you got to have Stuckey come in and put in the work with the George Hill, and come off the bench, bring some life out there, and really just get the job done.
Right. Well, again, they did get the win at Bankers Life here against the Mavs, 104-99. A couple nights later, last day of March, at Brooklyn, in the final matchup against the Nets this season, the Pacers let one slip away, losing 111-106, another close loss. Indiana's now 1-2 against Brooklyn this year, lost the tiebreaker thanks to this loss. Brook Lopez led the way for the Nets with 24, followed by Joe Johnson with 21 and Allen Anderson with 20. George Hill was Indiana's leader with 28, followed by David West with 14, so the two veterans leading the Pacers. This was a game, again, Rhett, where the Pacers completely went away from their defensive identity and really struggled in this one. Brooklyn seemed to answer every time, but they got down. The Pacers got down big. They made a comeback, but in the end, they didn't have enough firepower, and their defense was lackadaisical. What did you see in this one?
Just like the last game. The last time they played Brooklyn, my bad. I mean, Brooklyn couldn't miss. Indiana played piss poor defense, and you can't go away from defense, especially the Indiana Pacers. That's what they're known for.
Well, at this time of the year especially.
Yeah. I mean, just basically like last year, falling apart towards the end, and you can't have that.
No,
can't have that.
You can't. And when I look at the stats, one thing that stands out to me is the Pacers turned around their turnover woes. They only turned the ball over 10 times in this game.
Yeah.
And on the road, that is a recipe for success. But it wasn't in this game because it's more than just taking care of the ball. But I will say this, again, the Pacers hit 12 three-pointers in this game, shot over 50% from downtown. So they didn't necessarily play a bad game, but their defense wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I mean, Brooklyn shot 50% from three-point range. You can't, play some defense. If they would have, picked up on their defense, that could have easily went the opposite way. Like I said, you got to have defense to win a game.
Indeed you do. Indeed you do. Well,
the stats were very similar throughout the whole book for this game. Yes,
it was. It was indeed. Tough loss again for the Pacers. Well, a game that happened today, and we are going to cover it because of the technical difficulties that they played at Boston tonight in the final matchup of the year. The Pacers got punched in the mouth in this one, losing 100-87. Indiana's now 1-3 against the Celtics this season. Kelly Olynyk and Tyler Zeller both led Boston with 19 points. George Hill led the Pacers with 21, followed by Rodney Stuckey with 16. So Stuckey showed up in this one as opposed to previous games. George Hill seems to have had more 20-point games in the last 14 games than I ever remember him having. He's really trying to do what he can to step up for this Pacers team. But, Rhett, this was a tough game for Indiana. Very inconsistent once again. Their defense was awful, so their identity is completely lost. What did you see in this one?
Well, they can't rebound the freaking ball. I'll tell you what, they had 39 rebounds total as a team, and for assist-wise, they had 17 assists. Share the ball. The Celtics had 29 assists, so 12 assist difference. And one thing that really just stands out to me is the Indiana Pacers shot 56% from the free throw line.
Yeah. How about...
What are you, Shaquille O'Neal?
No doubt. Well, they hit 6 3-pointers, but how about shooting only 42% from the field? You're under 50%. That's just not going to get it done. And you mentioned it, being out-rebounded, being out-assisted. It's just not a recipe for success. And again, 12 turnovers for the Pacers. Still too many turnovers. And this game on the road, we had said it last week's show, this was a game the Pacers had to win.
Yeah.
With not many games left to the year, this was one where you can get a whole game swing. You want to try and get your identity back and make that final push. They went in the wrong direction.
Yeah, one thing that I would like to... Sorry, Kyle, what was that?
No, go ahead. I was actually going to just get to what you were going to say. I know what it's about. Mr. Hibbert, get to it.
Yeah, so Mr. Hibbert had 3 rebounds. 3 rebounds as a 7'2" big man. And on top of that, I have never seen a game where Roy Hibbert gets worked like he did today, and especially by Tyler Zeller. This is not the first time Tyler Zeller has put in work on Roy Hibbert.
Sounds like a shot at Tyler Zeller, but no, really, I think it's more of a shot at Roy Hibbert.
It's pathetic.
Not being the big man that he is and showing up, and I agree, and we'll get to that later in another segment here about Roy Hibbert. But yeah, it was not a good performance for the Pacers, and they dropped a tough one, and now they have an uphill battle, which is a few games left in the regular season. So, Rhett, before we get to the next segment, let's take a look at the current Eastern Conference standings. What do you see here?
Well, currently they're sitting 10th in the NBA for the Eastern Conference. So, really, my understanding and my opinion is the Indiana Pacers will not make the playoffs from losing from today against the Celtics. They will not make the playoffs. Like I said, that was a big game. They're 32-43, and Brooklyn is an 8th seed right now.
And the Pacers are actually in 11th.
11th?
The loss. The Hornets are ahead of the Pacers right now by half a game. So the Pacers are down to number 11.
So they're 2.5 games back, and the way that they're playing right now, inconsistent. Unless Paul George returned, I would, then I believe that they would have a chance at making a run. But really, as of right now, the Indiana Pacers are going to be watching the playoffs from their couch.
Oh, boy.
Or, they could be playing in the playoffs on their Xbox or PlayStation. So
he's got jokes, folks. Well, there's his prediction. I'll say this. It's tough when you're losing these games that you need to win to have that optimism. But in reality, they're only 2.5 back. They play Miami coming up, which could be a whole game swing. They're not out of the woods, but they're not playing like they want to make the playoffs. And that's rare for the Indiana Pacers. Here's my prediction, and I'm going to stick with it because I believe in Indiana. I think that they will get to the 8th and final playoff spot, but it is going to be tough, and it will come down to the last game, and I don't think that maybe they get in more so on their part, as is they'll get in more on maybe the other teams losing as the season winds down. But I think that they will get into the 8th, but again, Paul George returning can play a huge factor in that.
You also got to think, the last 4 games for Indiana, they're going to be playing the Grizzlies, Wizards, Rockets, and Thunder. Those are going to be 4 tough matches for the Indiana Pacers. And at that time, it's going to be very crucial for them to win. And to be honest, them beating the Oklahoma City Thunder is very slim in my book. And beating the Rockets, with Dwight coming back, don't really see it happening.
I agree. I understand. That's his prediction. We will see the Pacers on the ropes, no doubt about it. Well, let's get to this next segment, Rhett, and talk about the best offseason options for Indiana. Why don't you start?
All right. Well, first of all, you have David West with a player option for $12 million. If he leaves, that will free up space. But if he does sign back, you can always trade him in the offseason. So one thing that I have, cooked up in my books would be the Indiana Pacers targeting Kevin Love. As you know, Kevin Love, or if you don't, I'll let you know, Kevin Love has been not mixing well with the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think he's just trying to make it through this season. He has never had to play with anybody that is at like a LeBron caliber or even Kyrie Irving caliber. So he's he's somebody that does not. I don't think he mixes well with that type. So I could see the Indiana Pacers maybe targeting him, and they have shown interest in Roy Hibbert. So I think that there could be something going to be cooked up, which I think that there should be. Kevin Love is actually getting paid a little less than Roy Hibbert right now, which don't even get me started on Roy Hibbert's salary. But, signing Rodney Stuckey for the right price, he's making about $1.5 million right now, which from his performance, I believe that will go up. But if you can get him for the right price, that should happen. And
right.
And my personal opinion, the one that I have.
I love when you get personal, Rhett.
The one that I have that I feel like really could happen is Sir Lancelot coming back home.
You heard it here,
in
folks.
the off season.
You heard it here first, folks. Write it down. Rhett
Hensley's
prediction. Hey, I can understand that. Pacers fans certainly, I think, would be excited about that. Although he did say that he doesn't feel like he made a mistake leaving Indiana. That could be Lance just being Lance.
Well, I would honestly say that if it was coming down to us making the playoffs and
them making the playoffs.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry.
No doubt.
Them making the playoffs and them, you don't want to create anything bad, especially if the media is talking to you about that. You're not going to say, I want out, as they're, sitting 10th in the conference, about a game and a half back. I mean, I wouldn't say that.
No.
I mean, if I want to make the playoffs, then...
You say what your organization wants to hear. No doubt about that. All right, well, let's set the foundation here. The cap is projected for the Pacers to come in somewhere around $67 million, with the luxury tax threshold projected at approximately $81 million. This year's $63 million cap represented an increase of over 7% from last year for the Pacers. So they do well. Larry Bird, they plan financially, they do a good job. Now, let's take a look at the Pacers' outlook with the players that have guaranteed contracts through this next year. Paul George just signed his big 5-year deal. George Hill, good for another year. Solomon Hill, locked in. Jan Mahimi, locked in. C.J. Miles, locked in. And Damjan Rudez, locked in. There are no players with non-guaranteed contracts. 2 players with options. Roy Hibbert, who's making $15.5 million.
Oh, my.
And David West, making $12.5 million. 2 players that I can see going. But here's what I think about this. I'm fed up with Roy Hibbert. I'm on the Roy Hibbert out of Indiana train with you, Rhett. He's not getting it done. The man's just averaging over 11 points per game, 7 rebounds per game is not good enough. So I'm going to throw a name out for Roy Hibbert that I would like to see come. How about LaMarcus Aldridge for the Trailblazers, who is making the same amount of money right now that Roy Hibbert is, but it's about twice as good as Roy Hibbert is, averaging 23 points per game and 10 rebounds per game. I'll throw out another name because this is a loaded free agency list coming up. How about Marc Gasol? Is they're averaging the same amount of money, 18 points per game, 8 rebounds per game. This is very deep. How about DeAndre Jordan, who's making a few $1 million less, averages 11 points per game and 14 rebounds per game and 2.5 blocks.
I wouldn't want to leave Los Angeles.
No, and I'll throw out a couple. I'll throw out a few more. Paul Millsap for the Atlanta Hawks, averaging 17 points per game and 8 rebounds per game, making $9.5 million. Al Jefferson, getting older, but for the Hornets, 17 points per game and almost 9 rebounds per game, making about $13.5 million, maybe a little bit overpaid, or what the Pacers would want to pay for someone like him. But the one that I really am intrigued about and could see the Pacers going after, his name has come up each year, Greg Monroe.
I agree.
For Detroit, averages 15 points per game and 10 rebounds per game, and he makes $5.5 million. He makes $10 million less than Roy Hibbert and is much more productive.
That's
a player that the Pacers could go for and get for a steal of money. And it is frustrating. Talk about that, because Roy Hibbert was supposed to be the franchise player.
Yep. That was honestly the biggest waste of money I have seen for the Indiana Pacers. Especially if you could get somebody like Greg Monroe for like $5 million a year, and you're paying the big fella almost $16 million a year to basically sit there on the bench in foul trouble with 0 points and like 3 rebounds. That's just pathetic.
It is. And with David West being an option, the bad man that David West is, as long as he stays healthy, because he is getting older, if the Pacers can somehow keep him, it would be nice to keep the pieces that Frank Vogel has built with this team in Indiana together. But if it takes getting rid of West and Hibbert for a player like Aldridge, then I think that it is worth it, because I think that that's how Larry Bird is going to think, especially if Indiana misses the playoffs this year. After all the high hopes, knowing Paul George will come back healthy next year, I don't think you can go wrong there. But again, they don't have much room besides those 2 options. The only ones with options that they can get rid of, but they have enough money to bring in some good pieces, and that's what I think Indiana will do. I do expect Bird to make a splash in the offseason. But
no kidding.
Go ahead, Rhett.
I do think that they do need to re-sign Lavoy Allen. I think that he is a good bench player if they gave him the shot, especially if David West didn't end up signing or if they traded him, which I think Luis Scola, I think that his time is coming. So I kind of think that he needs to be traded also if it's good, like a good trade or anything like that, because I think Lavoy Allen, he has come in and shown that he can play. So I think that, he really could do that.
I agree. All right, so listen to this, Rhett. I'm going to name a few other players at the small forward / shooting guard position, mainly shooting guards these guys are, that are available for a very intriguing price for the Indiana Pacers. How about number 1, Jimmy Butler? Averages 21 points per game and almost 6 rebounds per game. He's making $2.1 million.
I love Jimmy.
Jimmy Butler, with that type of money, even if he wanted 3 times that, $6 million, and the Pacers have.
Oh, I feel like he's going to go for a lot more. I feel like he's going to be the franchise player if he stays with the Bulls.
I agree.
Derrick Rose is washed up for that.
Yes, Jimmy Butler, a very good one, number 1 in the shooting guard position for free agents. Another guy, I've been in love with this guy for years in the NBA. To me, the best 6th player that has played in probably 20 years off the bench, Jamal Crawford for the Clippers. Averages 16 points per game, and he is a man that is making $5.5 million right now. Again, another player who could give solid production. He comes off the bench and sometimes will outscore players like Blake Griffin and Chris Paul on game nights. He has so many 6-man of the year candidates and runner-up. It's unbelievable. Jamal Crawford, another player that intrigues me. How about Wesley Matthews for the Trailblazers? Averages 16 points per game, almost 4 rebounds per game, and he's making $7 million a year. Again, every player that we are mentioning that you could add to a piece for the Pacers to get rid of Hibbert are all making at least twice as less money that Roy Hibbert is. Another one, Danny Green for the Spurs. 12 points per game, lethal 3-point shooters, making $4 million. These are some players that the Pacers should look for to add if they try and find a centerpiece for Hibbert and can somehow bring in a shooting guard, add another piece to make this team deeper with Paul George coming back. That's what I think Indiana will do, Rhett.
I agree.
All right. Well, there you have it. We will see. Hopefully that won't come soon for the Pacers, but the way they are playing, it's looking like it may. I guess we will see. So let's get into this last segment here, Rhett. We're going to preview the Pacers' next 2 games, and then we're going to talk about Paul George's play or not play situation. So, on April 3rd, home game against the Charlotte Hornets, critical game in the final matchup of the year against this team. Indiana's 2-1 against the Hornets this season. In the first matchup on November 19th, home against Charlotte, the Pacers won a thriller 88-86. Al Jefferson led the Hornets with 28. Roy Hibbert led Indiana with 18. In the second matchup on January 17th at Charlotte, the Hornets got revenge with an 80-71 overtime win. Gerald Henderson led Charlotte with 20. David West led the Pacers with 19. Now in the last matchup on February 8th at Charlotte, Indiana stole one, 103-102. C.J. Watson led the Pacers with 22, and Al Jefferson led the Hornets with 30. Rhett, I think this final matchup will be another good game. For the Pacers' sake, it has to be a win. I predict Indiana will win at home 97-94. It's going to be a close game. I think every game here on out is going to be a close game. My keys to this game for the Pacers are get back to your defensive identity and fundamentals. Rebound the basketball. Take care of the basketball and make your free throws, and you should come out with a win at home against the Hornets. What do you see in this game, Rhett?
Well, fundamentals are key, and that is one of the things that they're going to have to do. It's going to be a great game. I think that about every time the Indiana Pacers do play the Hornets this year, that it has been a good game. I think February 8th, Kemba Walker was out with his injury, but he's still getting. He just came back not too long ago, so he's still breaking off the rust. So I think it's going to be a close game, but it is a must-win for the Indiana Pacers if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive. But, I'll be looking forward to watching that one.
Me too. Give me a score.
Give you a score. Well, I don't think they're going to break 100, so I'm going to say 98-94. Indiana Pacers win.
Pacers win. He's on the same page. Good to hear. Pacers certainly need it. All right. April 5th versus Miami, another home game. Again, final matchup of the year between these two teams. Pacers need to take advantage of their home games. Indiana is 2-1 against Miami this season. In the first matchup on November 12th in South Beach, the Pacers won 81-75. Chris Copeland led the Pacers with 17. Dwayne Wade led the Heat with 20. In the second matchup on December 31st at home against Miami, Indiana won again 106-95. C.J. Miles led the Pacers with 25. Dwayne Wade led the Heat once again with 20. And in the last matchup on January 23rd in South Beach, Indiana lost a tough one, 89-87. Luol Deng led the Heat with 23. Luis Scola led the Pacers with 14. Rhett, I think this final matchup will be another juicy one, as this rivalry always seems to boast. We can't stand the Heat. You know the Pacers can't stand the Heat. I predict Indiana will win a nail-biter at home. Yes, I'm predicting 2 wins in a row here. Indiana will win a nail-biter at home, 100-97. And my keys to this game, of course, are fundamentals, which it will be from here on out. It's the key to every game. Again, take care of the ball, rebound the basketball, make your free throws, and You should be solid at home. It'll be a close game, but I would also like to see a player like Roy Hibbert step up in this game. Make that final push for this team and show that leadership. And it's not all George Hill that has to carry this load for this team. The Pacers need players to step up for them. Rhett, what do you see happening in this game?
Oh, boy, I do agree that it's going to be a juicy one.
You got it.
Oh, yeah. But, I think that the Indiana Pacers, they do see that rivalry with the Miami Heat. Roy Hibbert's played well against the Miami Heat in the past, but really, with Chris Bosh out, I actually believe that it would have been a lot better chance of the Indiana Pacers beating the Miami Heat with Chris Bosh, just because Roy Hibbert does like to take advantage of Chris Bosh. But I'm kind of torn on this one, but I will have to say, just because of the dire need Indiana Pacers are of a win, I'm going to say that they're going to win this one. It's going to be a tight one.
What's your score?
Oh, I could see this game going into overtime, but I will say it would be 105 to 101.
Pacers get the win. We're both on the same page there. A game they certainly need. Again, this could be a full game swing for the Pacers. Huge implications in this one. All right, Rhett, let's talk about Paul George's play or not play situation.
Oh, buddy.
As of now, he is medically cleared to play, but there is a lot of interesting things going on with this situation, particularly with Coach Vogel and Larry Bird not being on the same page. Basically, Larry Bird says that he's been cleared by the doctors to play, and he expects him to play this year, and he thinks it's for his own good, not just to get into the playoffs, but for his mental state. You want to get back out there and you want to test yourself and help your team out. Well, Vogel, he offered the opposite. He said there's a lot of layers to that, so he hasn't been cleared to play for us. Vogel has faced a lot of questions with Paul George and this whole situation, but basically, when Bird mentioned the clearance was to play, Vogel said, well, that's what Larry said. And Vogel continued, like I said, there's a lot of layers to it. He's not ready. He hasn't reached our level of what we feel he's ready to play. Rhett, when I hear those things, there's definitely a misunderstanding going on and maybe some chemistry issues between the two. And Paul George, quite frankly, the whole situation's getting annoying. I know you're getting annoyed by it.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think?
It's frustrating. I think that if you are medically cleared and, you have been conditioning for a few weeks, and, he started practicing full contact, I believe. Was it February 28th?
Yes, it's been over a month that
Yes. So
has been full practicing.
It's been over a month of conditioning, breaking off the rust, and come on, you're doing freaking windmills in practice.
Exactly.
Are you kidding me?
I'd say you're pretty healthy if you can do windmills in practice, that you can play 20 minutes. And that's just it for me. I'm not saying that I think George needs to come back and he needs to play 44 of the 48 minutes for us.
No.
I think that he needs to come back and he needs to play 15 to 20 minutes, get his sea legs under him, and help this team to the playoffs because he is our leader. And again, go ahead.
Let me chime in on that one. If you're a leader of an NBA team or of any team, and you're coming off an injury and you're trying to make a playoff push, I don't understand what kind of player would not want to come back in and show your team that you care enough to come back and make the playoff push with them. that's going to make them want to play harder and get into the playoffs.
It will. And the thing is, we've talked about this. It reminds me of Derrick Rose and the injuries that he has gone through. The whole dramatic play out of how he was coming back and he's shooting around and he's getting fans excited, and then he didn't. And you know what? He came back when he felt right, and he got injured again.
Exactly.
Sadly for him that happened, but that just goes to show that regardless, when you're cleared to play by a medical doctor, you're ready to play. That risk is always going to be there, just like for any player, of re-injuring or getting an injury.
I feel like it could be even worse waiting longer and longer. Just like Derrick Rose, he waited even longer and did the exact same thing. It can happen, but
it sure can.
The same risk is there.
It is. Regardless, it's still there. And I know you mentioned to me that you think that it might be a little bit of a marketing scheme.
Yeah, I do believe that it could be a marketing scheme. The 2 games that he said that he was coming back, it has sold out the whole stadium. The whole arena. So, even when he's saying that, it could be a week or whatever, that's making fans want to buy tickets just in case he's coming. And, I personally wanted to go buy tickets when I thought he was coming, but, I wanted it confirmed, but, I want to see him return this year. I would love to go see him play, but
I would too. It's very true. And he said, a week ago when reports were coming all over the place that he was going to be coming back this week, he says, I don't know where that came from. And then he says things like, when the time is ready, I'll be back out there. And I've reached a point where I know if something's not right, but there are times where I surprise myself. And
what, surprise yourself when you're doing a windmill?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, you surprised me too, Paul George.
Yeah.
Come back out on the court and show us that in game form.
No kidding.
It's just like that. But this is what he said to reporters about his mindset regarding a potential return this season. I think if it gets to the point where these guys are in the playoffs and I'm thinking about coming back, I think at that point I might as well let these guys finish the year out because that's just too big to try and make a push. I want to play, but I don't want to play under any terms of just wanting to get out there. I want to be fully healthy. It's different if this was the beginning of the year and we were still trying to find our way. But these guys are playing at the top of their game right now, and again, the last thing I want to do is slow them down.
Well,
Brett,
guess what?
When I hear that, it makes me shake my head. It makes no sense to me. Slow them down. Could they be any more slow? They can't win a game consistently.
It's like the freaking turtle.
Yeah, I mean, he needs to not worry about wrecking the chemistry. That's not a leadership statement. You come back and you're going to bring this team together and playing. You're the leader of the team. I don't understand where he's at. I understand maybe if he's irritated about the whole situation. But again, either tell us you're coming back or you're not. Don't play it out like a drama movie.
Exactly. So, I still believe that, it could be the front office just trying to make him, get that out there that he might come back just so ticket sales go up because there's a possible chance they won't make the playoffs. So, trying to rake in as much money as possible. And, I believe that could be one of the things that's doing that. But it's not right to the fans, and it's definitely not right to his teammates.
I agree with that. I agree. So, with not many games left here, Paul George, I think Rhett and I are both on the same page. We love you. You're our favorite player. But
got your jersey on right now.
Yes, he does. Representing the gold. But tell us you're coming back or not. Don't play it out dramatically. Come back, help this team out as they try and make a final push to the playoffs. Otherwise, it'll be an early offseason. You'll have plenty of time to get healthy and be in the right mental state, that's for sure. So,
no kidding.
All right, Rhett. Well, that about wraps it up. We have reached our limit tonight. To recap what was talked about on the show, we discussed the Pacers' last 5 games. We took a look at the current Eastern Conference standings. We talked about the best offseason options for Indiana. We previewed the Pacers' next 2 games. And we talked about Paul George's play or not play situation. That is all we have for tonight. Thank you for tuning into our show. Feel free to leave any comments. Tweet and retweet the show at Kyle M. Newman and at Rhett Hensley. We will be back at it next Wednesday at 8 Eastern Time. I'm Kyle Newman.
And I'm Rhett Hensley.
Have a good night. Go Pacers.
Go Pacers.